Alright, what's up guys, Thomas here, and in this video I'm going to show you the top 10 handheld smartphone camera moves that are going to take your videos to the next level. Let's go. So the first 3 camera moves I'm about to show you are the basics. You're going to use these camera moves whenever you are filming. Instead of standing still and just getting a still shot or a pan, you're going to replace those standing shots with these 3 movements I'm about to show you. Alright, move number 1 is the push forward. This is a great way to draw the audience into your scene and instantly make everything look more dynamic. This is the beginner version of this shot. You just point and shoot, maybe moving around a little bit. It's not that great. Okay, so now the camera move. What we're gonna do is go slightly lower, and we're just gonna walk very steadily with our knees bent, moving towards the subject. Now, whilst this walk looks a little bit funky, the result is a very dynamic movement that draws your audience into a scene. This is a great movement to use if you want to start your scenes with impact. All right, smartphone camera movement number 2 is going to be tracking side to side. This is a great replacement for a pan. So we've got a beautiful scene in front of us here. How would a beginner capture this? They want to pan, try and get everything in. Not cool. Instead, let's do movement number 2. So we're going to start here, leaning from one leg. We're gonna lean from left to right to the other leg. And what that's gonna do is replicate a camera dolly. Usually in Hollywood, they have these films on these tracks that go side to side. Just by getting a little bit of movement, even if we're just covering 1 meter, can replicate that and give that subtle indication, especially if we're going left to right, that our video is moving somewhere. It's not static, watching different shots in one place. The camera is moving, the video is moving, and the story is progressing. All right, camera movement number 3 is the crane shot. This is cool when you've got a big kind of landscape in front of you. So we want to get this shot. It's a park, we've got trees, gray skies. It's kind of hard to make it look good. So what we can do here is actually come and film these birds from the ground and then come up in a crane movement, smooth as we can. So we're going to do that one more time. And coming up like that to reveal the beautiful landscape in the background. All right, these next 3 shots are intermediates. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean they're harder than the basics. There's just a little bit more thought gone into them in regards to composition and movement. All right, smartphone handheld camera movement number 4 is the reveal. Now, this is very similar to the side-to-side tracking movement we got, except we're revealing the scene from behind something else. So, this is where we can really start playing with the different lenses on our phones. So right now I'm using the wide lens, and whilst this is pretty cool, and what we can do is reveal the scene from behind the tree, what I really want to draw attention to is this nice tree here in the background that has these red berries on it. So we're going to change to the telephoto lens, and what that's going to enable me to do is reveal that tree specifically. So it's important here that we lock the exposure and focus onto the subject we want to reveal to, not the one revealing from. Now we want this framed up perfectly so we can kind of peek out, get a preview of the shot before, come back in, and then as smoothly as we can, reveal our subject. So camera movement number 5 is the push past. This is very similar to the simple pushing forward technique, except this time we're going to build on that and have something in the foreground of the frame. The reason we'd have something in the foreground is because that moves very quickly past the camera. So you see this tree in the background? That's actually what we're focusing on. That's our subject. So we're going to lock that off and we're going to push forward here with these branches in the foreground moving forward and out of the frame. Now, this not only provides nice depth, but it also gives a greater sense of movement. Okay, so another quick example of this is right here, we could do a simple push forward, and that looks nice. But if we just take a few steps back and go back out here, what we reveal is that we have this big gate. And if we move through this big gate, especially with a wide angle lens, and just do a simple walking movement, because the gate is passing through the foreground of our shot, it emphasizes that movement so much more. All right, this is one of my favorite moves coming up right here, move number 6. This is subject tracking. So we've got a subject here, which is a statue. If we did the classic tracking side to side, then it would look something like this. Not bad, but because there's now space on this side of the shot, it doesn't really feel like we're focusing on the statue. It feels like we're kind of moving past the statue, which is not necessarily what we want when we want to draw attention to our subject. So instead of doing that, we're going to move around the subject, keeping the movement going from left to right, but turning our phone so the subject is always in the center. Check it out. So starting from the left, coming around to the right, but pointing our phone, keeping the subject in the center. So again, a pretty subtle movement there, but just that slight turn really makes our subject pop out from the background. Okay, now we're entering pro territory. These ones, again, aren't necessarily more hard, they're simply more creative. They're movements that people wouldn't think to do, but once you do them, they can really add some flair to your videos. This is it, guys. We've gone from beginner and we are entering pro territory. Buckle your seatbelts. So, this first shot within the pro section is going to be called the Dutch spin. So, a Dutch angle in filmmaking is simply going at a diagonal angle. It adds this kind of trippy effect. What we're going to do is emphasize this with movement. So we're going to start like this at a diagonal angle, and whilst moving forwards, we're going to be spinning the camera. And what that does is provide this kind of trippy effect. Now, do be warned when using this in your videos, you want to put this in to convey a certain emotion. So let's say you want the audience to feel kind of tripped out. Maybe you're making a dreamlike sequence or something along those lines. At the pro stage, we can also start combining these with other techniques. So we can, for example, push past this first section of fence whilst rotating into a Dutch angle. Camera move number 8 is the push into focus. Now, this is really important when we're using smartphones to make films. One of the key differences between a smartphone and a camera is that oftentimes a camera, especially DSLRs, have a shallow depth of field, meaning elements in the background are blurry, elements in the foreground are crisp and in focus. So we can now replicate this with smartphones, now they're getting a bit better. So what we do is we get nice and close to a subject, we then lock the focus by tapping and holding the screen so it locks onto it, and then we move back. Now you'll notice that everything's blurry, but when we push in, our subject comes nicely into crisp focus with the background being blurry. We can start to get really creative with these kinds of shots, and doing this with the telephoto lens makes the look even more dramatic. This brings us on to smartphone camera move number 9, which is the macro texture. So if you have a telephoto lens, you're going to want to switch to that. Some phones even these days have a macro lens, so you might want to use that if that's on your phone. I'm just going to use a telephoto, and I'm going to focus on something that's in the foreground. So for example, with this tree, we can move up and down. Let's say you got 4 or 5 of these texture shots. You could cut between them to give the audience a really sensory feeling video, rather than just a load of wide angles that don't give us much of that sensory information. All right, movement number 10 is one of my favorite moves. Just before I demonstrate that, if you want a list of gear, of all the gear that you can use from a beginner to a pro on a small budget or a big budget, I have a free PDF which is in the description, which you can download. Just enter your email and I'll send that over to you. Okay, movement number 10 is actually a whip pan. So the interesting thing about this move is it's going to transition into the next video. So we're going to start the transition here, and the next video is going to begin with this transition so you can see that in action. So that video is in the link in the description below. It's all about how you can get epic in-camera transitions using your smartphone. So we're going to transition to that video in 3, 2, 1.